Welcome, guys, to another episode of Gol Bezan. It's been a long time coming. It's been a while we haven't spoken about Team Melli, but finally, pretty happy to be joined by the old guys of Gol Bezan, Babak Gol Risi, Naisamian Pejman Pars, and this is myself, Pasha Hajian. Guys, how you guys doing?
Good to wait, waiting. What's up, guys? It's been a long time, and I'm really excited for this one. So let's get it on.
Guys, so today we just want to just talk about obviously our new manager, Marc Wilmots. I mean, there was a huge, heavy backlash that he just recently just assigned, became like Iran's national team manager. But for the folks that really don't know much about Marc Wilmots, I mean, his CV is not really, comprehensive, as I should say. He was assistant manager for Belgium's national team from 2000 and 2012 under Dick Advocaat and Georges Linkens, which ironically, what I was told, or as you say, Gol Bezan was told, George Linkens was actually a big, huge person that told the Federation about Marc Wilmots' availability, and I guess that started things, and he's right now Tractor Suds' manager. And obviously, Belgium qualified for the 2014 World Cup, and a lot of people still credit Wilmots because this young group or I should say, the young generation of Belgians were under his hands. But even despite the fact that he failed, that a lot of people still credit him for instilling that confidence for them, which obviously Roberto Martinez then took over and whatnot. And the last thing before he's joined the Iranian national team was that in 2017, Marc Wilmots was appointed as Ivory Coast's national team manager, but unfortunately was sacked because he didn't fail to qualify for the World Cup. So, guys, the first question I have for you, Sina, I'm going to come with you, is that what did you initially first think of Marc Wilmots' appointment, and were you satisfied?
I think it's an underwhelming appointment altogether. I think considering the fact that for 5 months there was talks of some bigger names. I mean, at the beginning he started, I hope it was as a joke, but he started with Mourinho, Zidane and Klinsmann from the sports ministry. And then he ended with Marc Wilmots. There was other names involved in these 5 months, but I think considering the salary that's been agreed with him for $1.5 million a year, I think it's a very underwhelming appointment. I think for that kind of money, we could probably attract better coaches, better managers, with more experience and people who've actually got experience of managing a national team in the region. But if you want to discuss him and his CV, I think, as you mentioned, I think the Belgian job, I mean, it's my personal opinion, but I don't think he would have got the job was he not a legendary striker for Belgium. Because obviously his CV is not good enough to manage the golden generation, as you said, of Belgium. And previous to that, he managed St. Truiden, a mid-table Belgian team, for 7 months before he got sacked. And his time in Ivory Coast was a disaster as well, having spoken to a few journalists. So, as I said, it's an underwhelming appointment. I'm sure we're going to go into more details in regards to it, but of course, we don't know what the future holds. He might end up being a relatively good appointment, but at the moment, with the facts that we've gotten, with his past and his CV, and considering the context, I think it's an appointment that we can be slightly disappointed with.
Babak, what is your take on this?
I'd like to know who those people were who were praising him for taking the golden generation, Pasha, that you mentioned earlier, because I genuinely cannot think of anyone who's had any positive remarks about his role or his time with the Belgian team. If anything, he probably robbed them of an opportunity to challenge for titles. I mean, under Martinez, we saw they have the potential. They could really have made more of an impact on the international scene, maybe in the tournaments that Wilmots had them as manager. But like Sina said, underwhelming, very disappointing. I would probably wager that he won't even see out his contract. I can see this relationship breaking in a matter of months, even over different things. I don't know. I would have. I even tweeted this a few times. I probably would have preferred Ali Daei or Amir Galenoy over him, to be honest. And I rarely ever prefer an Iranian coach over an international or foreign coach, let's say.
Pejman, obviously with what Bobek and Sina said, would you still even think that obviously if that was going to be the case, and I know you're not a huge Marc Wilmots fan yourself, but knowing also that Branko Ivankovic has won, the championship 3 times with Persepolis, he's now in a three-peat, he knows Iranian football pretty well and everything. Did you think that, potentially we could have had him instead of him?
Well, I think he was interested in that himself. And the good thing about Branko is that he knows Iranian football, he knows the federation and the do's and don'ts and the Iranian culture and the lack of proper organization, which is, I think, is important for everyone that wants to be involved in Iranian football. In that sense, it's good, and he's proven himself in Persepolis. What I do believe would happen with Branko is that there will be a lot of bad blood coming up, and we will go back to the Iran we were used to see, that we see in the league. Maybe it's kind of a lot of bad mouthing, a lot of issues going into the media instead of trying to solve them in the national team. But then again, we saw that with Queiroz too against Branko. So I don't know if that would make any difference. Mm-hmm. But I have a question here. Do you know another coach that didn't have any good results as a coach until his last employer actually did it great with that one? Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, if you're trying to say Carlos Queiroz, I wouldn't agree with that.
No. Okay. So I would say Zinedine Zidane, the guy we were talking about. I mean, his CV as a player, sure, that's great. But as a coach, I mean, he was like in Real Madrid, Castilla, and he didn't get any good results there. They weren't improving, and he wasn't a name for the future with the results he got. But all of a sudden, he got Real Madrid A team, and he made wonders with it, despite not having any a resume. I mean, the best coaches in the world have been in Real Madrid, and all of a sudden, Zinedine Zidane with 1-2 seasons in Castilla without getting any good results, and like a 1 year as assistant coach before that. That's nothing.
Yeah, but sometimes someone is in the right place at the right time. And with Zidane, for sure, winning 3 Champions Leagues is amazing, but he still has his critics, and it's probably too early to put him down as like a great manager. I know it's harsh, but I would argue that.
I think the context is a bit. Sorry, Pejman. I think the context is a bit different as well. You're absolutely right about Zidane, but I think the context in which he took the job is completely different to the Iran job. I mean, when you talk about Queiroz and the success that we all know that he had with Iran was down to the fact that he was a really good coach. Not necessarily a manager. That's a different thing to talk about. But as a coach, he was world renowned. There's no doubt. I mean, you could even listen to Roy Keane, who
is one of the greatest coaches in football history. I think it's quite well documented.
I've seen this point being made on Twitter by various people, and as much as I appreciate the point that they're trying to make by comparing the CV of Queiroz before they took the Iran job, it's completely 2 different worlds apart. You're talking about Queiroz as a manager who won the Under-20 World Cup with Portugal. That's laying the foundation of a golden generation. Managing, of course, Real Madrid, even though it was a disappointment. Taking South Africa to the World Cup, managing UAE, being the assistant manager of Sir Alex Ferguson for so many years in a really successful period, and of course managing Portugal as well. That's completely on a different level to when you're talking about Marc Wilmots, who probably had the career as a manager solely based on the fact that he was a player at a very top level. But what I'm saying is I've seen that argument being made, but also as I said, I think the context is a bit different here. I think Iran needed more of a coach figure rather than a manager. I don't think Wilmots is good at neither, by the way.
Yeah, Sina and Babak and also Pasha. Well, listen to this. Let's not forget that Queiroz, he wasn't really improving. He wasn't really impressive. The first year in Iran, to be honest, he had some problems against minor teams, and there were some shocking results in the beginning. And people were like, "Is this where we're heading?" at the same time he was showing real passion, and he was really determined and focused, and that's maybe what people were like, and they were able to see the long run that it will
Yes,
actually be
but that's because of Kirosh having a track record as an
Yeah.
excellent coach, which I think we all agreed at the time was what we needed.
But it
We
doesn't
needed a
matter.
coach.
Iran have had really good coaches, at least
Come on.
in
I'm talking about real
and also,
club level.
I think,
real
guys, I
coaches.
think what we need to take into account is the circumstances in which they've taken the job as well. When Kirosh came in, Iran was probably at its lowest point
Yes,
in, I would say, in the
absolutely.
last 2-3
Yeah,
decades as well.
Guys,
Coming on the
can
back
I,
of Ali Dai,
Yeah.
Galenoy, Ali Dai, and
We
Qutbi,
didn't have any
failing to
players.
qualify.
can I
Failing to qualify for the 2010
say,
World Cup. We had the 17, 18-year-old Ansari Fard as our centre forward. So when the expectations are so low, and you're right, Pejman, he was disappointing in his first few years. I remember the loss against Lebanon, the 1-0 loss
Yeah.
away to Lebanon.
that's when we thought he was
But
gonna get
because
sacked.
because the expectations were so low before he came in, he had that room for error. Whereas for
Absolutely.
Belmots, that's not the case at all. He's just we're just talking about a
He's
team
coming
who
on
had a,
high. Now he's
exactly.
coming on
We're talking
high.
about a team who had a very, very good performances and results in the 2018 World Cup, semi-finalists of the Asian Cup. Whatever you may make of the, whatever you want to make of the result against Japan, that's fine. But semi-finalists nonetheless. Having some of the best players in Asia at the moment, a great team, a great structure, and he's
Record
coming
number
in
of
with
foreign-based players as well.
absolutely a number one team in Asia for so long, and he's coming in as a coach whose reputation is not so great as a coach. And look, we follow European football outside of Iran, and we all know his results with Belgium. But I think some of the Iranian fans may not be so aware of why he's regarded as such a
It's not even
disappointment
his results.
as a manager with Belgium.
It's not even his results. Did you even try to feel what sort of football they were trying to play or what tactics they had? The defense was all over the place. The top players who used to play great football with their clubs would come at Belgium and look clueless like average league players.
No, guys,
It was ridiculous.
I think you're getting this wrong and too hard to be honest. Listen, this was probably the first really start of the golden generation that we call in Belgium. It was their first spell. In my opinion, I don't think that they were quite ready for the task. They almost made it. They were a narrow loss to getting into the semifinals of the World Cup that he had, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so it wasn't all that bad.
Guys,
What about the loss to Wales?
let me guys ask you a question, right? And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here, but I'm just trying to
You
put
should, you
myself in the standpoint of the Iranian Football Federation. Marc Wilmots has not been in the job since 2017. Isn't that already a red flag?
No.
Look,
That's actually
when it comes
attractive
to international
from the federation. From federation's
Exactly.
point of view, it's attractive. No compensation out of a job. We can negotiate, but I actually think they got a bad deal because if they're paying $1.5 million to him,
Right, which
when
was
they were
going to come
paying
back to my
Kirosh almost.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the
ridiculous.
point. I think with the whole appointment, with everything that's been going on the last few weeks, my biggest problem with this is the salary that they're paying him. I don't have a problem with a below average manager coming in. That's fine. You know, we can't get anyone better. We understand the circumstances, sanctions, etc.
But
That's
Sina,
fine.
quick
But
question
paying
for you.
$1.5 million.
But which other foreign
in-
manager would come into this country right now within Iran with the issues that we're having much lower than
No,
that?
but that's what I just said. I
Yeah,
completely agree.
yeah,
But my
yeah.
point is, why pay that manager for $1.5 million a year?
Maybe for the same reason. Maybe Sina for the same reason that they wouldn't do it for anything less,
Yes, yeah.
and they wanted to get a name in there.
I think there would have been other managers who would have been, as I said, maybe with even a bit more experience and a bit more
No, they
promise.
definitely
They
would have
wouldn't have.
been.
So
They
I,
would
I,
definitely
that's my
Van
biggest issue.
Marwijk early days would have been a far better appointment probably.
I
We'll
think
never
even
know.
if you go a tier below, someone like Paul Le Guen, who managed in Europe for so many years, managed Lyon, Rangers, PSG on top of my head, has managed in the region with the Oman national team. He's very experienced. There's no way he would have been paying 1.5 million. And I think if you want to compare CVs and compare them as coaches and managers, Paul Le Guen by far. Exactly.
Yeah,
guys, listen. The choice have been made. You know, we can argue that somebody's better or worse. You know, but the choice have been made. So you know, let's focus in on Wilmots.
Yeah.
What I want to say here is that Wilmots is not starting at the same level that Queiroz did. Okay, so Queiroz have prepared him a really good team with a good structure, with a lot of good players that's accepted, at least outside in the media, to be on the bench despite being stars in Iran and in their clubs. Okay, uh, if Wilmots is smart enough and have had good people around him and smart people around him in the federation and probably some of his scouts, they will tell him this, that this team that you have received is ready to play football, and you have now a great opportunity to how can you say, to all the critics that Queiroz got for being too defensive, for not using players like Osmoon and Jahan Bakhsh and Qudus the right way. You have now the super good opportunity to make Iran a solid attacking team as well. Because I do believe that the defensive skills and the defensive uh, set of mind that we have in Iran, I don't think that that will disappear just because Queiroz have disappeared. And he showed us that players that we didn't have any faith on, like Ruzbecheshmi, or new players like Majid Hosseini, could easily step up and do that great work. Mm-hmm. So what I want to see from Wilmots now, I don't care about his salary. I don't care about his CV, what he have done and haven't done. What I want to know is what can he do with Iran from this stage. And I do believe that he uses all the good things that Queiroz built with the defense and start to make Iran a more attacking country. Because Iran won't be in the World Cup, and hopefully we in 2022. Are we going to play defensive against Oman and teams like, I don't know, Jordan and Iraq? We can't do that. It's time to gear up and use all of that skills. And we saw how Osman is doing in Russia when he can be offensive player. We know the skills that Jahan Bakhsh and Qudus have, but come on, let's face it. None of them have been the players in that they can be under Queiroz, and that's the most important thing for me. For Wilmots to do something about.
Now, guys, let me pick up on what. Oh, is there something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think everything Pejman is saying is correct. I think the thing that I'm kind of looking forward to finding out the most in the coming weeks is his coaching staff. He's been promised that he'll be getting 1 or 2 Belgian assistants.
Yes.
And having spoke to a few Belgian journalists in regards to his time in Belgium, just him as a manager. One thing they all said to me was that majority of if there was any good work that was done during his time in Belgium, it was mostly down to his assistants. One of them being Vital Borkelmans, who's just been appointed as the Jordanian national team manager. So I think for me, the most important thing is to find out who his coaching staff are. Of course, we know Queiroz had a very, very strong team of coaches who helped him build that team, and I think that's one thing we need to keep an eye out for, because it could be an indication of how this team is going forward.
Now, Babak, obviously, with what Pejman said, and obviously we all know that a great foundation that Carlos Queiroz left. I mean, he built a family, as we even Ali Golizad in our last interview mentioned. The team that he is about to inherit, Marc Wilmots, do you think, what kind of philosophy do you think he's going to instill in this player? Is it going to be the traditional 4-3-3 attacking, or do you see something else from?
It's too early to say. I mean, Wilmots doesn't have too much of a track record to be able to say that he's definitely going to go with one formation over another. But with Belgium, we know that 4-3-3 traditionally, or 4-2-3-1 are formations which were used at different times depending on who played where. But I would presume that more or less in terms of the setup, we would be playing like we have under Queiroz in terms of formations, let's say, or positions. But in terms of style of play, like Pejman says, logically speaking, Wilmots is not a tactically astute coach, and we didn't see tactical acumen in his time at the Belgium national team. So, but we did see an adventurous side that can score goals, that does play attacking football, maybe exposes itself a bit too much, naive at times, but maybe, like Pejman says, that is what we need, a little bit of the shackles off the players and giving them the chance to express themselves a little bit more than they have during the last few years.
Seeing obviously with what Pejman said, as we've seen Saman Qudus, Ayriza Janbakhsh, and now Saad Razun potentially could thrive under attacking manager. Where do you see them going under this manager?
I don't necessarily buy into the attacking manager point of view because I don't think he has a philosophy as such. Mm-hmm. But I agree with the point that the shackles might come off. And I think in the short term, and by short term I mean within the next year or so, it might bring some really good performances and results because of course the players still have that foundation of the work that they did with Queiroz, but of course with the new manager coming in, maybe giving them a bit more freedom. The mixture of the two will provide some good performances and results. But I think forward and talking about qualifying for the World Cup, things might get a little more trickier. And especially yesterday, the news that the 2022 World Cup will be with 32 teams and not 48. This means the job for qualifying for the World Cup is still the same and still a difficult one to get through. So again, I've still got question marks over the next 2 or 3 years, but I think the point Bobak and Pejman were making in regards to the freedom to the players and being a bit more attacking, I think is valid for the next year or so.
Pejman, obviously, Marc Wilmots has been outside of the job for 2017, and obviously he's got inherited one of the best teams right now in Asia, arguably still the best team in Asia, which I still have my question marks around it and everything. But my question to you, does he really know what he's getting himself into? Is he just, for me, sometimes I feel like sometimes he's just in here just to say that, oh, I have a job to do, because he's been out of the job in 2 years now, let's say. Does he really know what he's getting himself into with all the issues that we have?
Does anyone in Iran know what they're getting into despite having years of coaching experience? So no, I don't believe that. I think that he's heard a lot, and hopefully he's been talking to Queiroz as well, and getting some tough love and some smart advice of do's and don'ts. I know that Taj said in his that the contract will be written as the new national team head coach is not allowed to talk, or at least talk badly about the national league and the teams, and that was what Queiroz and Branco were arguing about a couple of years. So they tried to fix something that they needed to fix a couple of years before. So my question is now, what challenges will Wilmots have in Iran, and how will he cope with them? I think one thing that's really important for Wilmots and any coach that will be in Iran, that you have to live there. You have to be in Iran, not only for being close to the federation, of course, but you have to earn the people's respect. And the media as well. I think the media is really
for me. It's too simplistic and too, I don't know, maybe primitive to say I have to live in Iran so that I can get the people's respect. What about what happens on the pitch? That should be more important than anything else.
Of course. I'm not talking that the results aren't important, but
No. I mean, if he performs and he gets the team to do what it's supposed to do, and the results are coming, I don't care if he lives in Mars or Tehran. It doesn't. For me, as a supporter of the national team, it means nothing.
But the thing is here, Babak, when the results won't come, and of course he will lose some games that we were not supposed to lose. That will come. Every team makes a couple of those losses. It's nothing strange about that. But how much have you? Can you back yourself up? How much have you to follow?
You have to be. You're going to be open to criticism, and you have to accept it at that time. It's typical of any.
But you're talking like it's like in Iran. It's something that's it's done professionally, and it's relevant, and it's done like the way we do in Europe.
Nothing is done professionally. Nothing is done.
So if you
he's going to face that anyway. Yeah. He's going to face that for even things that are not logical or justifiable. It's going to come. First team he's going to pick, they're going to say, why didn't this player come in? That player doesn't come in. There's always going to be some drama that's going to be stirred up.
Yeah. So what will happen when he won't get his salary, or when players maybe start to become different
that's what I
groups,
was
like
about to
with the
bring
Reds
up,
or the Blues or
Pejman.
whatever.
I was gonna ask you guys now a question. I'll ask this to Sina, and then I'll ask you and Ballback again. And Sina, do you believe? Let me just put it this way. Do you believe honestly the players are gonna respect who they're getting right now?
I think that's a different question that we don't know yet. I think it's difficult to say whether players respect a manager or not when they haven't even spent a few days of training with him. And I think it would be silly to assume that the players don't respect him because there's no basis for that. I think it's just it's a blank page at the moment. We have to wait and see what happens. But in regards to the discussion that Bob just said, I think they're both making valid points, but I think there's got to be a middle line. I don't expect him to live in Iran, and why should he? But at the same time, I think it's very foolish and a bit naive of a manager to just turn up the day before a training camp or the day before a squad is announced and then leave the day after. I think, look, I mean, in Europe we have the same thing. You know, look, with Queiroz, actually, one of the best things he did with the national teams was the player matrix that he created, that he discussed with us on the podcast. That was created based on him and his staff watching players on TV and through tapes. And that's how it's done all over Europe, right? But we still get European national team managers. I use England as an example. Gareth Southgate still goes to watch the club games of players that could potentially be invited to the national team. There's no need for him to do that because, again, the way the game has moved on in terms of technology, you can just analyze the players by watching the tapes. But that is just an indication. It's almost like a tradition of the manager going to watch the games. And look, of course, Iran games, the Iranian league is not everyone's cup of tea. It's boring, etc. But if you're the national team manager, this is what you've signed up for. This is your responsibility. I expect him to go watch a couple of games here and there. And to be honest, I think with Queiroz, I think he was a bit naive towards the end not to, and that's what upset a lot of the media.
He did that in the early days. He did that in the early days.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, after how many years, when he knows which players are good enough, if he doesn't have any doubts and he's dead set on this is my 40 players, which I'm gonna keep under a microscope, it's just doing it for the sake of doing it. If he goes to some games, maybe it's no longer necessary. But I agree with you. The coach should watch games.
And I take that. And I want to connect that to the other point that Pejman was making in regards to the media. You both remember, and Pasha as well, remember well that how much of his work and how much of the things he was trying to do was done by the media in his early days. And this is just part of that process. He had the media on his side. You remember the argument and the debates over the poor national team sponsors and so on, over the training camps that he wanted to have, friendlies, etc. Media and the new contract, that was another big issue. Media, and not just one media source, multiple media sources had a big effect on him getting those things because he was having a good relationship with them. And this is just part of that. That relationship completely broke down in the last 18 months to 2 years, which created this mood and atmosphere right now in Iran, which is completely in favor of Wilmots and everything he wants to do, just solely because they were so against Queiroz. And then if you're watching the news, if you're watching the analysis of the local experts and just the newspapers and media in general, you can actually feel that. And that has affected the way the federation has gone out to look for Queiroz's replacement. And going back to the point what Pejman was making in regards to the contracts, he's right. Todd has come out and said that. He said that in part of the negotiation, and this is actually clauses in Wilmots' contract, that the manager is not allowed to talk about the managers in the local league. He's not allowed to have training camps outside of FIFA days. He's not allowed to comment in regards to the sponsors of the national team kits. These are all issues.
Such a weak. For me, it just illustrates how weak our federation is and how they can't think outside the box. It's just ridiculous, really. I get speechless sometimes. Not to comment on sponsors, not to have camps outside FIFA date. If it's your national team and you're the football federation, it's in your interest to keep an open mind about what is good for your national team. But to completely come out there, it just shows how weak they are and how they don't want to confront the clubs and the league.
Completely, absolutely. And what it also indicates is a big major fact about Wilmots himself. So when you're asking the question of does he know what he's getting himself into, absolutely, of course he does. There's no way in the world he's not had those conversations with the federation and with the representatives. Absolutely no way.
Let's be clear. Why wouldn't Wilmots be happy if his boss is telling him, hey, by the way, I don't want you to plan any extra training camps or this and that? He's going to say, okay, I'll collect my money. I'll do my FIFA days. I'll do the training. I don't talk to the media. I don't do this. Very easy job for me. Carlos Queiroz actually put too much into the job, too much passion, too much heart, too much care, probably far more than half the country, at least when it comes to giving enough for the flag of Iran. But Wilmots is coming as a professional and he's thinking, okay, why not? So yes, I agree with you, Sina. He knows what he's getting into, and I think for him, it's a job, at least right now. Time can prove us wrong, but it's a job, and he's thinking, okay, it's fair enough. The boundaries have been drawn, and I'm going to work within this. Why not? It's quite normal.
Yeah,
so absolutely, and let me just rephrase the question then. So rather than asking, does he know what he's getting himself into, how about we ask, with all the restrictions that have been put on the manager, not the problems that we have in regards to the federation, such as sanctions and not getting friendlies, but these restrictions that have been put on the manager, which top-level manager would come and work in Iran? That's the question.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, we would know. I mean, I could honestly tell you with some of the people names and the stuff I've heard. I mean, it was just not gonna happen. But my next question for you guys is, I'm gonna start this with Pejman. Pejman, what do you want to see different under Marc Wilmots that you wanted Carlos Queiroz to do, but he didn't do? Is there some slight differences or something that you want to see differently being done now by this new manager?
Yes, as I said before, I want to have a more attacking and daring Iran, using players as Azmoun, Qudus, and Jahanbakhsh the proper way, which I believe that all of us were kind of convinced that they didn't have their best spells in the national team. Also, I think it's time to let a couple of the oldies that were good in the team as maybe like mental coaches or taking care of the young players. It's time for them to step back and allow the coach to bring in some new players. Of course, I'm thinking of Masoud Shojai and maybe Obid Ebrahimi. Ashkan is interesting because Ashkan, he still got it, and he's just came back, but I don't know if he will be up for it for 3 years in the World Cup.
He's 33, don't forget, he's 33.
Yeah, so Ashkan is, I don't know, I think he can contribute, but the second he gets injured a long time, it's time for him to step back as well. Pejman Montazeri haven't yet stepped back.
35, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there are a couple of these players that.
So who would be the next captain? Let's say if Ashkan and Masoud decide to be step aside from the national team, but they'd be pretty much.
Why not Sardar Azmoun? We have Ehsan Haj Safi from before, so he's the national captain.
Yeah.
But I would like to see Azmoun, and I'm thinking about Zlatan Ibrahimovic of Sweden. He really grew as a player under Erik Hamrén when Erik Hamrén made him the captain, because to be honest, he was a natural leader anyway, but he wasn't the captain. Erik Hamrén got a lot of criticism for his maybe naive way of thinking and playing, but he made the best out of Zlatan, and maybe giving the captains, making Azmoun the captain, can make him a less vulnerable player, a less sensitive player, and have to take more responsibility because he can't cry after every loss.
It's a good shout.
Babak, my question to you is, let's say, hypothetically, that Masoud Shojai and Ashkan Dejga do remain. Obviously, they've been such great leaders for this Iranian national team, somebody that Carlos Queiroz was really fond of. I mean, how big of a role would you still see them playing, under Marc Wilmots, for him to transition to becoming the next manager?
I wouldn't be surprised if they're there for the first few months, considering that they both have European experience and are respected professionals, and Wilmots will know that. He could be a bridge for him to understand the players and the team, but on the pitch, I don't see much, if any, role for either of them over the next few years. And if they do have, I would be quite surprised and disappointed in the rest of the players who haven't stepped up to push them out of the way. So, and for me, it's not a major topic right now, and I'm more curious to see what sort of football we'll play, what ideas he has, because ultimately, as much as we're going to criticize him, he's a very, very experienced professional. He's a legend in Belgium. He's managed some world-class players like Moussa Dembele, Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, and many, many other players at Belgium. He's also worked under Laken, so we can't dismiss that experience. Maybe he was not good enough for Belgium. Maybe he will be good enough for Iran. Maybe he is what we need right now, someone with a little bit less coaching, like Kirosh, who may have overcoached sometimes even, and someone who would allow the players to express themselves a little bit. So let's keep an open mind. And for me, expectations are low about qualification for the World Cup, etc., etc. But hey, let's see. You never know what happens.
Hey, this is Arash Markazi from ESPN, and you're listening to Gol Bezan, your one-stop shop for all your Iranian soccer news.
Guys, I'm going to ask you guys now questions that we have from Twitter. Some of the questions we've already answered, but there's new ones. This is from, and thank you guys for sending your questions in, by the way. This one is from Ashkan Pika APP. And his question is it possible to qualify just by relying on the player's talent with the ones that we have at the moment? Sina?
I would say solely relying on talents, no. Because, as I said, for the 2022, there's only 32 teams, similar to 2018. It's not going up to 48 teams yet, which means Asia still gets 4.5 places. And of course, we've got Iran, South Korea, Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia. Now we've got the new heavyweights of Asia in Qatar. By the time the qualification gets into the harder stages, we could have China, even UAE, even Bert van Marwijk. So it could get even trickier than it was already. Not to mention Uzbekistan, of course. So we can't just rely on players. We can't just rely on talents. No chance.
What are your takes, Babak and Pejman, really quick?
Yeah, I probably agree. In the past, we've gotten away with it, I think, historically. But now the gap between the teams are not too much. That differences are on the details, and I think the details come in coaching, tactics, a little bit of luck, and I don't think talent on its own can, unless you're really lucky with the draw, I don't think it's enough.
Pejman?
Well, it's hard. I do believe that Iran have the talent enough to actually be a top 4 or top 5 in Asia, because the other teams are simply not good enough. Yes, we do have a new and interesting Qatar, but at the same time, we have a weaker Australia than we've seen in many years. Japan and South Korea somewhere always seem to get in there, and I think Iran, with its talents, should be able to stir some things up. But of course, you need some good coaching. Everybody knows that. But I think the talent is quite solid, to be honest.
Right. We have a few more questions, and obviously a huge favorite of Gol Bezan. My favorite as well, at Yavi_Shaw has a question. We've already...
Yavi, our boy! What's up?
We've already answered his question, but his question is, do we really believe that a manager who in the end held back Belgium from progressing would achieve anything of significance with Iran? And he said, my opinion is absolutely not. So, guys, just quickly, your take, Babak?
Yeah, anything is possible. It's too early to say. Let's see what he does with Iran. Yeah. Sometimes, like we said earlier, the right man in the right time in the right place. It can happen. Maybe he is what Iran needs right now. If it is, it's not because of the wisdom of the federation. It could be just because we've been lucky, probably. But you never know. Let's keep an open mind. He hasn't even taken a training session. He hasn't even selected the squad. We don't even know for definite what his coaching staff looks like, so it's still early to say, but anything's possible.
Sina, I'm gonna ask you another question from Twitter at Nima. Then it's BURLAKOF. I don't want to butcher that name, but his question is, Am I right that he's in favor of a 4-3-3 attacking style, which we've pretty much hinted on? If you want to readdress that, could this be a benefit for players like Osman and Jawan Bash? And he said, I mean, we want to score more goals and we have to adapt an offensive style.
I think, as you said, we kind of touched on it. I think Bobak certainly did. One thing is for absolutely sure is that he's not a tactical manager. Regardless of who you talk to, and please, if you're listening to this and you don't believe it, please go and research on your own if you need to. You would not find a good comment in regards to his tactical knowledge. So there's not much to say about that. It's 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. He's not going to play 4-4-2 or a back three. So that's that. I think it will be more attacking than Queiroz. Players will have more freedom. But the good thing is about the Asian World Cup qualification is that for the first 18 months, you have room for error. You have room to try things. You could get away with a few things here and there. And I think that certainly gives him some breathing space. I think in the next 12 months, his competition and the official matches he plays will be against lower teams. So that gives him a good chance to get to know his squad and get to know what and how he wants to play in order to build the team for that last 12 to 18 months for the World Cup qualifications, when we'll play the big boys. But I think, as I said, it'll be more attacking and offensive than we were on the Cairo.
Yeah, last question, and I'm going to give this to Pejman before we wrap it up. But guys, also just a quick point is that his job is also much harder that, FIFA didn't expand the teams to 48 teams for this World Cup. So that's something else. We're going to keep retaining the 32, which is another key thing that he's obviously going to be aware of. But anyways, at Aria_Aloverdi sent us a question, another regular of Gol Bezan. And this question is for you, Pejman. The amount of criticism Wilmots has faced, in my opinion, is pretty redundant at the moment. Yes, you can't deny him, but if you're talking about how he would do with Iran, nobody knows. It's impossible to tell. I absolutely think he deserves a chance to prove himself. And I know you've hinted it, Pejman, but let's wrap this up. Your last take on this?
Yeah, I have a question or thoughts for you, Pasha, and the rest of the guys. Who do you think should be his Iranian coaches or his Iranian helps? Because he will need some help from Iran. Pasha, what do you think?
I mean, I believe that Nekonam just signed a deal with Foulad, if I'm not mistaken. So he was the first person that came to my head that if he was going to be an assistant. I hope to God is not Ali Karimi, to be honest. And obviously it won't be...
it won't be.
Yeah, it won't be obviously Ali Dai as well, but it's very hard to say. I mean, it's very hard for me from top of my head to... And I believe Yahya Gol Mohammadi even obviously just signed to become Iran's U23 manager, taking the shoes of Zlatko Kranjkar. So it's tough for me to say. What about you guys? What do you think, Bob X?
I've got two names.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like both of them there. And they're the only two Iranian coaches I would give a chance. Vahid Hashemian, Mehdi Mahdavikia. Both of them educated. Both of them studied at the highest level of UEFA. I think Hashemian has a pro license, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he does.
And they haven't had the chance at all in Iran because of all the... We know how things work in Iranian football. It's more like who you know and how big your mouth is. And these guys have always kept their head down and done their job professionally. Yeah. So I would be happy if one or both of these guys join his staff. And I think they would get respect of the players for the careers they've had in Europe. And I don't think there are too many fans who could criticize them either.
Sina?
I think that's a very good shout by Bobak, although I'm not sure if Mahdavikia would take the job if he was offered. He's obviously busy at Hamburg. I think he's coaching one of their youth teams, and also he's got his own project at KIFC. And it's a very, very good project. They've got a very good youth academy, bringing up young Iranian players. Hashemian is a very good option. As he said, he does have a pro license. He's coached in Germany, and he spent, I think, a few weeks as part of his pro license with Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich. So he's got the knowledge. I think he should be given a chance. Also, another name that I think should be there as a symbol of continuity, consistency, and stability, just to help Wilmots through this transition from Queiroz, is Marc Wilmots. He was there from the beginning. He knows he has a very good relationship with the players. I think he working on the Kairos, he probably knows every single player who plays in Iran. He can be of great help to.
But I don't think that you think the federation would forget Wilmots, but you don't think they wanted a clean break, and bringing Markar in keeps a little bit of the cloud of the Kairos era. I can't see it happening.
Possibly, but also I think more than that, I think they want to have a big name on there, which is why Nekunon was linked at the beginning. But in terms of the coaching perspective itself, I think Orojanian would be a very healthy choice. It would make sense from a lot of different angles. And to be honest, he was never in any controversy in these few years. Even when Kairos was coming out and giving interviews, he was always quiet, and I think he has a good relationship with everyone. So I don't see a reason why he shouldn't. But again, you're right. It's the federation. We can expect anything from that.
Guys, just a final point. Just your last points. If I could just get a quick point from you guys. Bobak?
I'm excited.
I sense a sense of sarcasm. Sina?
Look, when all's said and done, the criticism is justified. As I said, it's underwhelming, disappointing slightly, but he's here now. It's done. He signed a contract. He's going to be the new manager. All we can do is be positive, give him a chance, support him through it, and I say this as advice to myself. Not to panic if something goes wrong in the first couple of games. Give him about a chance in the next year or so, see how he does.
Speaking about panic, would you be happy if he called back Ayr Zahiri?
I don't think Ayr Zahiri would recall himself to the national team, let alone Wilmots.
Pejman, your last point?
I really hope that Marc Wilmots will continue the great development that we saw in the Iranian national team and add some new flavor and making it more exciting. And it's really important that we give him and his coaching staff the proper time to actually show himself. And just as Sina mentioned before, I mean, you have a year and a half at least to show yourself. And if you don't manage during that time to do anything good, you still have enough time to replace him. So let's be positive and let's give the man a proper chance to show what he can do.
Yeah, my last point is I believe he's going to last 2 months into the job, not because of the work he's doing. I feel like he'll find out that what he thought he's going to get himself is not really what he thought he got himself into, and he's just going to depart from Iran, and somebody else is going to take his shoes. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for listening, to the discussion and everything, and thank you to the guys for coming on, and let's see what happens under Marc Wilmots, so World Cup 2022.